So I started growing my hair out in the spring, and I was going to this race with Owen in Yokohama, and I was like, I'm gonna go to a Japanese barber, have him or her cut my hair.
Hmm.
And I found this guy, went to him, and I took my phone in, and I was like, hey, here's what I'm looking for, and I showed him my phone. And I should have known that it was probably not the best plan to stick with this guy when he pulled out a magnifying glass to look at my phone.
Oh my
I was like,
God.
oh, okay, so how, like, can you see what you're doing? But
Uh,
anyway, he
was this barber like 100 years old or
he was
something?
old, but not super old. And I was like, all right, well, let's just roll with this and see. And anyway, I let him cut my hair, and it was cool because he did like the what you kind of envision, or at least what I envision, which is like he took a comb and scissors and he was just like going super fast.
Yeah.
But when he got done, he like cut a lot of the growth in the back, and I was kind of like, the whole point of a mullet is to like basically keep the back intact and cut like this pretty short and leave a little bit on top.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know what a mullet is, but anyway, he kind of like didn't exactly give me a mullet, and I was like, oh, so all this energy I put to like growing out my hair for this mullet is kind of lost now, and I have to basically restart it. That was in May of last year. So anyway, I kept growing it out, and
Hmm.
Kelsey has done it since, and like it's gotten completely unruly and out of hand and like kind of obnoxious, where like I can't get under a swim cap,
Oh,
and it's getting hot here in Tucson, so I'm kind of like it's probably gonna go before I race. But I'm also getting nervous now because I'm like, is this like powerful? Like, is there mullet power? And like I gave John Reed, the guy that I train with here, a little bit of grief when he cut his hair earlier this year. He did a race in, I
hmm.
want to say Napier is how you say it, in New Zealand.
Okay.
And he cut his hair right before the race, and it was kind of like a middling race for him. And I was like, it's because you cut your hair, dude. So um, anyway, I'm talking about it a
Ooh.
lot more now, and now I'm like building it up. So now I'm like trapping myself into having to keep it, which maybe I will, but I also might just shave it. So
I do get the sense that like you are the kind of person who is like, oh, now that I made that bet, or now that I like said that thing, like I 100% have to stick with it.
I didn't like commit to anything
Hmm.
other than to myself, So I'm kind of like, if I feel like I need to honor it for myself, then I will.
Yeah.
But I didn't like tell John or anybody else that I would like keep this mullet for the race. That was never a thing.
Ooh.
So
Okay.
I
Well,
haven't
Ben
asked.
Hoffman,
Yeah,
are you going to keep this mullet for Ironman Lanzarote?
TBD. I'm not gonna
There
trap
you go.
myself in a new answer right now. I feel like
Good man. Good
there's a high
man. Well
likelihood of
done.
either direction, honestly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, everybody, Ben Hoffman, who is my guest today, grew up in Grand Junction, Colorado, and then went to college in the professional triathlete incubator that was the University of Montana in the middle aughts, and then started racing professionally in 2007. The internet has different opinions about when your first pro race was.
2007 sounds right because I definitely was still racing as an amateur in 2006, and I feel like 2007 Wildflower probably was my
Mhm.
first pro race. Yeah.
Got it. That's where I eventually settled. But since then, Ben has won 8 Ironmans, 770.3s, and been on the podium a wildly impressive 28 times. One of those being second place at the Ironman World Championships in 2014. He lives and trains in Tucson, Arizona, where he's also a dad and a husband, and is known in triathlon circles simply as the Hoff. He's racing Ironman Lanzarote in just a few weeks, which may or may not be where he steps away from the sport, and may or may not be him racing with Mullet. Ben Hoffman, welcome to the infirmary. I hope we can help.
Yes, me too. I need probably as much help as I can get. I do feel like I'm on a decent trajectory in life right now, but yeah, getting older can be challenging, man. And for sure, doing this sport at a high level, at least when you're, 41 years old, is a new challenge. But yeah, life is good. Thank you for having me on and having the interest in hearing a little bit about what's going on for me.
Yeah, I'm super stoked to talk to you. I pinged you a little bit earlier to just say like, hey, you're down to talk about retirement and whatnot, and and you just brought up like getting older. What what sort of like when did you start thinking about exiting the sport? Like, how did that begin to appear for you?
Well, I mean, that's a tough one because I feel like you see these little glimpses here and there all the way through your career. I mean, anytime you're racing as a professional, you see people that are exiting the sport. I mean, at the end of their career. So I would say probably the first time I thought about it in any real way was when I was training with Richie Cunningham and Chris Lee in Boulder, and they were both about 10 years older than me. And I kind of saw when I was in my, oh geez, I guess it was right around age 30 or early 30s, they were kind of ending their careers and moving on. And um, it was still pretty abstract to me, even though I got out and trained with these guys every single day. And I was seeing what was happening firsthand for them. I mean, in particular, I remember Richie complaining about what I now complain about with his body. And, I just kind of dismissed it because I wasn't living that reality. And yeah, that was probably the first kind of time that it was like in my face at all in the sport. And then, of course, I watched people like Craig Alexander, who I trained around and definitely admired as one of my, heroes in the sport, retire. And yeah, and then I guess for myself personally, when I really first started thinking about it, it probably wasn't until sometime during the pandemic, probably. And I
Mhm.
couldn't exactly pinpoint without, I don't even know, going back and looking at like photos or something to try to, remember where I was or something. But yeah, I feel like it happened during that time, mainly because the world sort of slowed down and this thing that I knew to be this anchor point, this thing that I focused on, usually Hawaii every year and another Ironman race, it all got totally changed. And we also introduced two children into our lives, one right before the pandemic hit. Josie was born in September of 2019, so 6 months before the pandemic hit. And then Julian was born in February of 2021. So during that stretch of time, we also brought two babies into the world. And I think that was then that I started to think about the retirement thing more so for myself. And I remember making a plan that ended up being kind of like Sebastian Kienle's, where I told myself I would do 2022 pretty seriously because it started to look like we were going to have, and we did have, two world
Mhm.
championships for Ironman that year. And yeah, I felt like I could be confident that there would be good racing that year. And so I committed to a high performance year in 2022. And then I thought I would have a year in 2023 where I just did whatever I wanted, whether that was gravel or mountain bike races or trail running or anything that was kind of probably still endurance based. But
Mhm.
as it turned out, I got an offer to join up with a Paralympic team and guide a visually impaired athlete. And I started doing that in 2023. And that, of course, led to me going to Paris last year in 2024. So once I committed to that in 2023, it kind of meant another year. And then I will say that sort of led to where I am now, which is it was a challenging experience for me on a lot of
Mhm.
levels. And I felt like I really wanted to get back to doing something for myself one more time.
Mhm.
And basically, I decided to do, yeah, at least one more Ironman this year and just kind of try my best to enjoy the process and
Mhm.
see if I could be excellent one more time. And that's where we're at right now.
Nice. As it's sort of shifting from like an abstraction, like 10 years ago, Richie and those guys are retiring and it's not real for you. But now it's becoming, it's moving from an abstraction to something that is happening at some point in the near future. What are the feelings that you're feeling around that?
I think it changes, not daily, but certainly monthly, the way that I view it and think about it. And so it's not super consistent. I mean, I feel like the range has varied from certainly anxiety
Hmm.
to, yeah, like I guess more peace, and acceptance. But certainly, like in my best moments, I feel like it's not something that I feel fear about because I back myself to kind of be successful in whatever I choose to do. But I think the anxiety or like the stress that comes from it is more just that I really love and I still love what I'm doing.
Hmm.
And it's hard to imagine my life without it. And I just built, 20-year career where I focus so much energy on it. So changing it is a bigger and slower process than I anticipated and inevitably, full of challenges. So yeah, it's a wide range of emotions. Right now, I'm pretty much at peace with it because I feel like, I needed to have like a couple false starts of retiring sort of. And it's funny because even as I'm saying this now, I'm like, well, not 100% sure that I'm definitely done.
Totally.
And I don't know if that's a good thing to do. Like some people need to say, absolutely, I'm done,
Mhm.
just for themselves, I guess, to move on. But I'm more of the mindset of like, well, why would you make this ultimatum or this statement necessarily? I mean, I'm more kind of like, get going with something and then take in the data and decide as you're going, like, do you still like this? Is this fun? Do you see a pathway to continuing? But and I've had a lot of fun doing this build, but it's also been enough feedback in the
Mhm.
negative, so to speak, where it's like your body doesn't do the same. It's a lot of work. You're tired around your kids. You're not making as much money. There's all these
Mhm.
layers, right? And so I'm getting that feedback too. And I think it's enough to kind of indicate to me that it is probably the time to
Mhm.
wind it down.
What are you looking forward to post retirement?
Probably the first thing that pops to mind probably is being a little bit more energized with my children and just a
Yeah.
little more present and focused on them. I mean, I think I'm a good dad. I think Kelsey would say the same, but I think, yeah, something I could definitely be better at and want to be better at and want to put more focus into. And I realize how special and finite this time is that we have with them while they're sort of captive.
Mhm.
And yeah, I guess I'm looking most forward to that, and also probably maybe returning to putting more emphasis on my relationship with my wife
Mhm.
um, and just kind of liberating myself from some of that selfishness, that is required. And it feels like it's justified because whatever you were making money doing it and, you were successful or whatever. But um, yeah, I feel like I'm tired of that too. It's one of the negative feedbacks that I was talking about that I got too is that I'm just sort of tired of like thinking that I have some self-importance that I,
Mhm.
I know I really don't, I guess. I'm not different or special in any way to anyone else. And so, um, yeah, I guess I'm ready for that to sort of fade into the background. At least I think I am, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, those are probably the things that come to mind first.
How did you arrive at that particular knowledge of like, I don't have any self-importance? I think that that is a really hard thing for people to come to terms with. And I think a lot of people never even get there. And especially given, what you have done, like being very much in the public view for so long and doing it at a high level. How did you get there? How did you arrive at that knowledge about yourself?
I think just kind of the feedback of realizing that the moments when ego was really guiding things, that it just
Mhm.
didn't end up well for me a lot of the time, that I didn't really get positive feedback. Or at least it didn't feel good to me. Like maybe I got external validation or something, but it didn't really feel rewarding or good to me. And so that's probably, I guess, just seeing that pattern of like, oh, this was sort of like an ego based thing. I was sort of navel gazing and like, you know, really self obsessed. And here we are with this kind of outcome that I don't feel that good about. And so I
Yeah.
think seeing that pattern over and over again just like led me to believe and see more clearly that yeah, just another dude out here, man. And I'm good at exercising, but yeah, it doesn't make me special or
Mhm.
better than anyone else. And so, and I do think too, I saw this said once, and I'm sort of embracing and understanding it more, but and realizing it's true for me too. That um, and I don't mean this as an attack on people that don't have children, but I saw somebody say once that you really can't ever truly grow up until you have children because it teaches you to love something else more than yourself. And I definitely think that that's true for me. And that was a piece as well of this kind of evolution, I guess, of realizing that, um, yeah, I'm not as important as I once thought I was when I was younger.
Nice. Can you tell me like a specific story of one of those moments where you sort of felt like your ego was the focus rather than something else?
I mean, I probably could if I thought about it more than what just pops into my mind immediately, which is just social media. Um,
Uh-huh.
it's like I still spend some time on it. I don't use it nearly the same way that I used to. I recognize that it um, helped me build a career, and
Mhm.
I'm really grateful for it in some ways. And I still think it can be used in ways that are positive or inspirational or whatever you want to call it. But in general, I also have. gotten to the point of feeling kind of turned off by it, because anytime I even post something simple on a story on Instagram where I'm out training or doing whatever, I'm just kind of like, what makes me think that people care about this? Like it's just a
Yeah.
weird feeling. And I know that people do, and I don't want to make it a negative thing. Like some people genuinely, they're just like my friends and family, and they're kind of like, oh,
Mhm.
cool, Ben's doing another long ride or whatever it is, and they're genuinely excited. And or maybe I inspire somebody, like I said, to go out and do, a challenge that they were thinking about doing. But just that moment, I think of activating, the social media and then engaging with it, it just feels kind of like, yeah, whoa, weird. Like, you think, yeah, you just like think that people care so much
You're right.
or something.
Yeah. You said something a few minutes ago that I want to go back to about like being excellent and like, this goal of trying to be excellent a few more times this year. What does that mean to you? Like, that can mean so many things to so many different people, but how do you tell if you have been excellent or not?
Yeah, really only I know, I guess, because that's kind of my big metric, is like whether I feel like I have done um, the things that make me feel excellent. And yeah, I would say, for most people, that the first thought is probably like the race result tells the story, and you're like,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I have obsessed about, race results, and I have definitely always focused on having that be a component, and
Mhm.
I think it does tell a piece of the story. But as I've gotten older, I would certainly say that my focus is much more process oriented, and just like really realizing that every day is where it's at. I mean, every training session and interaction with the other athletes that you're training with, those are the moments that really sort of build the whole story, I guess. And I've just been way better at embracing all of those, um, and viewing them sort of positively, I guess. Yeah, I feel like I've been a lot better this year, especially at just not ever, like, if something doesn't go according to plan, or perfectly on whatever that even means, I kind
Mhm.
of like just let it go a lot easier. And I'm like, well, I'll just do it again later, or do it tomorrow or next week. And, this is all part of it. And like, I don't get attached to any one high emotion or low emotion. And it's been really good that way. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's kind of what I would say about that, I guess.
What will like when you're going to go do Lanzarote in a few weeks, and what do you think, like how will you know during the race if it's kind of going the way that you want a race to go? Like what are the how can I guess a better way to put this is, can you recognize when a good performance is happening while it's happening?
Not sure you can. In my years of racing Ironman, and I don't know how many I've done now, but I'm sure it's over 30 full distance races. I can think of a handful of times when I at least romanticize looking back. I don't even know if it's exactly true, because you can't, live in any moment except the one you're in. I have these memories of races where it felt like things went kind of smoothly or went really well, and I had command of my body for the whole day, and I didn't break down in any major way. Like, I can think about three or four of those maybe. And the rest, it gets ugly at times, and sometimes the result looks better than you felt, and
Mhm.
sometimes you feel like you really executed well, and you don't necessarily finish, as high as you think you should have, or you'd like to finish. So no, I don't think you always know. Yeah, because I mean, you could be feeling really good, and maybe somebody else is having a better day and they're just crushing you, or you could be feeling really bad, and maybe that's part of it, right? I mean, you've seen this probably video of Eliud Kipchoge circulating, where he talks about like the best runners are the people that just sort of like get into the pain, and they're just like, this is exactly what's supposed to be happening. And
Mhm.
you really just embrace it and get into it. And that suffering, which our knee jerk reaction is to think of it as like a negative and a bad thing, is actually the thing and exactly what it should be, because what we're doing is not sitting on the couch. It's the
Mhm.
opposite. We're straining ourselves. We're basically pushing ourselves to the brink of death in a way. And, it's like your body's trying to shut you down and stop you. So, yeah, I think feeling bad, so to speak, could also mean that you're going to have a great day. And
Mhm.
um, Yeah, I don't know if I don't know how I'll know exactly, except for I've been telling people that I would like to be able to access the training that I've been doing um, on the day to like execute on that. Not necessarily to have some insane day where like I'm pushing 400 watts or something and I'm way above what I've been training and running paces and like it's all easy, but just even to start with just feeling like I'm doing what I did in training and not
Mhm.
like blowing up and not accessing that. So, and if I do that, I think historically, traditionally, it's meant that I'm pretty competitive in the race. So,
Nice. Uh, we bumped into each other in Tucson a little over a month ago. And one of the things that stuck in my head from just that quick conversation we had on the bike, you had said something about the way that your training has kind of changed over the years. And you said something about, in the past, you've been able to string together blocks that are much longer than, what most triathletes can kind of handle. And my question is to you about that is how did you even discover that capacity in the first place? And then a follow up is how has it shifted and why?
yeah, I think my superpower in training and, therefore then racing is probably just that I can do a big workload usually and handle it without breaking down. And um, I'm not, I don't think particularly gifted genetically. I mean, unless that's a gift, which I guess it is, resilience or, strength and ability to be durable.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, my VO2, I think, I only tested it a few times and I think that was anywhere from 73 to 75. So it's like good, but not phenomenal, not like Norwegian,
Yeah.
90s or whatever. And yeah, but I always felt like I just, from the beginning of training and endurance, I didn't get injured a lot. I saw people around me having stress fractures or strained muscles or this or that. And whether it was by, things that I was doing, my biomechanics, or just the simple fact that I was like built, proportionally. I don't even know, man. Or if I was doing more self-care. I
Mhm.
just felt like I learned pretty early that I could do that. And the way I learned, the question you had, I feel like was just from curiosity. I thought it was cool. I don't know where that came from, but just to like go do big stuff. Like I like that. And so right from the beginning, it was like, can we ride all day? Can we like go run around that mountain? Can we, just kind of push the boundaries a little bit and see? And yeah, I mean, even back to the beginning of my pro career training in Durango, Colorado, I feel like, I was doing 120-mile rides and things, and it was just kind of like a normal thing.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I was just curious about how much I could do, I guess. And um, I remember reading a quote or something from Brett Sutton, who's, obviously somebody that, um, yeah, he, I guess, inspires different opinions from different people, but he has coached some, high level champions. And he talked about Greg Bennett when he retired, actually. And I remember him saying something to the effect of like talking about a training session one time where Greg got on a treadmill and he was doing these 400 repeats that were super fast and he just kept going and going and going. And it was like, he talked about Greg as this guy who was always hungry. He always wanted to do more. He always wanted to like see where the limit was. Um, and that it was like really cool to coach him because he had that hunger and that desire to push. And of course, that can lead to injury and burnout and all kinds of things too. But I think it's better almost to have that and then find the line than to like never flirt with it or, cross it because that's how you, I guess, discover in some ways your potential. But yeah, the second part of the question I've already forgotten as I've rambled on. So you can
Well, basically,
ask me that
like
again.
how, like you said when we were on that ride that you were like, oh, I'm not stringing together 12,
Oh,
13
right.
week
How
blocks
it's changed.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. How has it changed? And I guess kind of the similar question is like, how did you discover that you needed to change it?
I think just out of the simple fact that I don't feel like I don't know. I just don't, I can remember how I felt when I was maybe in my mid 30s and it was like, I would do these group rides and things and it would build pretty quickly. And I see it with some of these younger guys I'm training with too, where it's like in a short span, in a matter of weeks, them doing consistent, focused, intense work, and, volume as well, they get a lot fitter.
Mhm.
And I used to be like that too, where I was like, okay, well, you know, one or two hard run sessions on the track or, you know, some tempo work. And I'm like, okay, I've turned a corner and bang, like I'm pretty fit now. Like I can build off this quickly. And now I just noticed that like I do get there. It's never quite the same feeling, at least as I remember it, but it takes a long time. It just,
Mhm.
you know, it just feels like I'm kind of grinding and grinding and grinding for, you know, months potentially to get to the point where like I have this 3 week period of like, oh, now I'm on top of it and I can kind of do whatever I want for about 3 weeks leading into a race when I'm super fit. Um, but yeah, that's just been the last, geez, probably 3 or 4 years where it's felt that way. And
Mhm.
so I think a lot of it just has to do with the recovery side where, you know, you just don't, I still sleep pretty well most of the time. Maybe sleep's not as good as it used to be when I was younger. But for sure, like a hard run, a hard long run, I feel it, you know, sometimes for a couple of days. And
Mhm.
that did not used to be the case. You know, you might be a little tired the next day, tiny bit sore, but it would go away quickly. And now sometimes I can really feel it stick around for longer. So yeah, what I do is I just build a longer runway. I mean, the reason we chose Ironman Lanzarote is because I kind of felt like if I start around the first of the year in January, I'd like to have about 4 months where the first month can just be kind of like, you know, build it up a little bit aerobic, get consistent again. And then it's like 3 months where we're like pretty dialed in on a program.
Mhm.
And, um, and that's what we've done. And I was like, that's the time, the runway that I need to get to a race. And Lanzarote happened to be the only race that kind of piqued my interest that was around that time. And I didn't want to go deep into summer where it gets super hot here because I'm in Tucson, Arizona. So I kind of wanted to finish it in that winter to spring time. And so, yeah, we just sort of talked about it, Ryan Bolton and I, and we basically said this is a good runway. And it was perfect because I needed that time. I feel like all of it. I got sick a couple times in late January and early February, and it was like, instead of, you know, my younger self would have probably pushed through that a little bit more. It was like, I'm just going to rest a lot more and let this kind
Mhm.
of pass through. And I'm not going to get super stressed about it. I'm not going to like freak out because you can actually do, you know, a lot in a relatively little amount of time when you do it the right way. So
Mhm.
yeah, I feel like it's gone really well, and we just built that longer runway, built it up slowly. I don't run nearly the same volume that I used to. Um, my swimming's probably about the same, but it takes a little while to build it up. And then cycling, I'm a little bit less, but I still ride quite a bit. So it's mainly the
Mhm.
run side of things. And then I still strength train twice a week, which I think is also a critical piece of like, you know, staying healthy at my age.
How do you decide when it's time for a rest? Like, is that something that you and Ryan work out together and it's planned, or do you wait until you see something showing up in your body or the performances start to drop? Like, how do you decide when it's time to take a little break?
It's a really good question because historically I've really struggled with rest. You know, I feel like I'm the kind of athlete where it feels like I'm going backwards if I take rest days, you know, and that's not really the case. In fact, it's the opposite where, you know, it can really allow you to access that next level and take a step forward. Um, but it's taken, you know, my, I don't know, years, I guess, and a lot of my career to get to that point of accepting that and understanding it. But yeah, for sure, we have a plan laid out. I mean, Ryan programs literally the entire block. I mean, roughly,
Mhm.
maybe not every session exactly, of course, you know, but um, it's basically periodized so that we know kind of when those rest times are coming. And funny enough, this last cycle, I had a week where I was like, excuse me, the fatigue was really building, and I was like, man, I am tired. Like I'm kind of struggling to like, you know, get out there and do the sessions and just sort of like feel even halfway human. And and I really was about to be like, we need to like call this, but I got through that, and then the next week I had a rest week,
Mhm.
or at least I had a rest few days, like 4 days, I feel like, or 5 days even, that were kind of Monday through Friday that were a little easier before a bigger weekend again. And I was like, I feel good now. I made it through that like fatigue period. Now I want to like keep going. Um, but I actually took the rest
Mhm.
and I just forced myself to do the easier sessions and like take it easy. And it was hard to do, but now I'm like accessing another level because I took that break. So it's kind of tough, you know, like I don't know if I have a perfect answer to it. It's like sometimes you really have to listen to your body and sometimes you do have to push through. and actually just kind of be tired. And I think
Mhm.
I always said that to people actually about some of the other pros I raced, where I felt like, not that I knew all of their training perfectly, but I felt like a lot of people get scared when they get tired and they're afraid to be tired. And the reality is that if you're going to do Ironman at a high level, there's going to be a significant period of time when you're kind of a zombie and you feel really tired, and you have to just kind of accept that. And of course, there's crossing the line, getting injured, which I've done. And
Mhm.
I think I have a sense of that, so that I do know when it's like really actually at the line a little better than maybe some people do. But yeah, I mean, yeah, training is primarily an act of faith, as they say.
I say that a lot to a lot of athletes, and yeah, it is that's sort of where I've gotten to as well. Is that it is this strange act of faith because you do never know what's going to happen, and not I mean racing as well as life, and it is this process of just like, okay, I'm going to do the work and listen to my body, and then see what happens.
Yeah, and sometimes you're not going to listen to your body exactly, right? I mean, or
Yeah.
yeah, or I guess something like that. Because yeah, it's I think people want these clear-cut answers, and the reality is it's more nebulous than that and more gray. And sometimes you get it right, and sometimes you don't. I mean, I feel like I'm on track to get it right again, but I also don't really know. Um, and I'm talking about just the result, because I'm on track and I am doing the first part that I told myself I wanted to do, which was enjoy the process and be
Mhm.
excellent again. And so that already is a success, regardless of the outcome, whether I even get to the start line. And I told Kelsey that too when we made this decision together about doing this, at least once more. I said, I'm fully open to the idea that I could get into this and that I would want to stop halfway through, you know, like I might just have to accept that I start
Mhm.
training again and my body is like exhausted and I'm not having fun with it and it just seems like silly, so yeah, I feel like you kind of just touched on it. You don't know what's happening in life. Um, you live each day. You kind of do the best with the information you have, and you take in the data and make your decisions. But ultimately, like you know, what do they say about plans? It's like they're essential, but also they're like they rarely work out, or whatever.
Mhm.
So it's like you've got a plan, but it's like you can't be so stuck on the plan that you don't live life the way it's actually happening.
Is that a perspective that you have had your entire racing career, or is that something that has developed for you over the course of your career?
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of examples of when I maybe had that perspective when I was younger. So, and I can't right away. So I think maybe it's something that's kind of developed more over time, and how to just through the experiences of having setbacks
Mhm.
and having things not go according to plan. So, and I say that knowing too that things did go according to plan often for me. And I got really used to that actually. And
Mhm.
it was maybe bad in some ways because I wasn't learning certain lessons all the time about how tricky it really is and how luck plays a role in all of this. And um, yeah, just how I guess finicky all of the sport can be. So I got pretty good at sort of having the illusion of control about it, and having things go pretty right most of the time when it came to like preparing for an Ironman. But
Mhm.
yeah, I would say it so that it probably is something that developed a little bit more in the latter half of my career. But yeah, and I say this about like when people would ask me about retiring and what I was doing next, I'd always be like, honestly, number one, I don't even want to go there too much in my head because I feel like it takes me out of what I'm doing right now.
Mhm.
And number two, like, how could I mean, I could tell you a plan I have, and that's great, and maybe it'll be the thing I do. But I also know that I've met people and I've turned into great friends with them, and it's opened doors, and this has all happened within the span of a month or two, right? So like, you don't know who you're going to meet, you don't know what's going to happen, and I think you have to be open to all that.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's kind of the way that I've at least evolved into living. I think maybe I've always sort of had it, but um, I'm especially aware of it now that I don't try to look way too far down the line.
So you just said that you think maybe it started happening in the second half of your career when maybe things weren't going always to plan all the time. Uh, do you remember a race or maybe a training block when it really didn't go according to plan, where you were like, "Oh, whoa, this is not the way I expected this to go?
I mean, the easy one to talk about is 2018, which a lot of people probably know about through, the history of my career, which was one of the only years I didn't race Hawaii. And it was because I had a sacral stress fracture, which turned out to be, um, you know, an injury that a lot of other professional triathletes have had, including Jan that same year. So we both sat on the sidelines with the same injury, actually, and watched Patrick Longa, annihilate everybody on a kind of windless day, but super fast. So yeah, that one certainly, and I was really fit. Like, I mean, everyone says that, but I was very fit. In fact, so fit that I was pushing probably too hard and too far, and that's probably why that happened. Um, so that was certainly one time that didn't go according to plan. Another time was 2021 when I raced in Chattanooga, Ironman Chattanooga. I just kind of, I don't know, I had a weird like getting back into the groove, wondering if things were really happening with COVID or not. And like, yeah, I had a hamstring niggle that was kind of holding me back from full running. And so I went into that race just sort of like a little bit unprepared. And I had a
Mhm.
pretty solid day, but it showed in the back half of the marathon. And yeah, those are just a couple, I guess, for sure. One not even be able to toe the line, and then another one where it was like, yeah, I just didn't show up firing at 100%. And a couple of guys were for sure better than me that day.
So you've been in the sport a long time. You've kind of spanned two generations. You talked about, training with Richie and Chris, kind of that very much that generation that was kind of dominant from the middle aughts to the middle teens or so, and then continued to be really successful into this, this next period of the sport from like the middle teens to the middle 2020s. Um, what has changed in the sport that has surprised you?
I think yeah, just the level and depth. I mean, for sure, the speeds have gotten faster. Some of that's technology. I mean, obviously the super shoes, everyone started running a lot faster, but um, yeah, I feel like, it's crazy how fast these guys ride now. And
Hmm.
that level is super high. And again, the depth, I mean, just the number of people that are going that fast. I mean, you remember when people breaking 8 hours in a race was a big deal. And now sometimes you see a race where 10 guys will go under 8 hours in any given race. And you're just like, and you maybe don't even know a handful of those people's names because they're kind
Hmm.
of obscure European people or whatever it is. And you're just kind of like, how is there this many people going this fast? And I actually chatted with Joe Skipper about this the other day. He and I did a quick chat, and I was like, I'm kind of confused because, it seems like on one hand, there's less money in the sport and it's a tough time for sponsorship and other things. But on the other hand, like there's more people, more ladies and more guys that are going fast and somehow are figuring out a way to like make this their sort of profession, or at least, they commit a ton of time to it. So yeah, I don't know how that works out, what that story is exactly, but I've been pretty impressed with just the level, I feel like it happened during the pandemic, and
Hmm.
I don't think it's nefarious. Like a lot of people talk about, oh, there was no drug testing and this and that. And maybe that happened with some people. I don't know. I just think that a lot of people like really focus super hard. I mean, I watched Sam Long here in, Tucson. He and Lionel were going back and forth on that lemon. And some people really took advantage of that time and just got a ton better and they raised the bar. And it was kind of
Hmm.
like, I remember racing Challenge Daytona, whatever it was, the PTO race, maybe the only race that happened in 2020.
Hmm.
And I was like, whoa, these guys got really fast this year. And I was like, not, serious enough or something.
Hmm.
And from there it just kept going, man. So
Yeah.
it's uh it's a brave new world out there. It's pretty cool to see though. And
Yeah.
apparently the sport's growing. I don't know. That's the latest data, right, from Ironman. So that's also cool to see.
How have you had to like adjust your training and your approach to deal with that increase in speed? Like, how have you shifted the way that you train?
Well, I mean, you touched on, or you asked me about it earlier, and I didn't really touch on it much. But one thing for sure is, you know, I would say it just takes me longer to get to the point where I feel like I have the foundation to do the intense work.
Hmm.
But especially the last couple of years when I was doing this shorter racing with Owen, who I was guiding, it was sprint distance racing we were doing. So I got on the track a lot more and I did fast 300s and 200s and 100s and, 400s. It was just kind of like stuff that I didn't do historically a lot of. And I think it really helped my biomechanics and got me back to that sort of core, form that I need to be focused on. so yeah, doing stuff like that, and then um, yeah, just kind of not the same run volume, total volume, but definitely keeping the intensity pretty high. And it again, it just takes a while to get there. Like I did a
Mhm.
double hard run this week, and it wasn't exactly like my old self, but it was pretty close. But I'm only doing one in this whole cycle, whereas I would have done two or three of those,
Mhm.
and they would have had a little more intensity in them. Um, so yeah, it just, it's just different that way. Not, it
Mhm.
takes longer to get to the intensity, and then when I do, it's less actual intensity, total volume of intensity, I guess, so to speak.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean, and maybe, the power numbers are a little lower than they used to be on the bike, but I try to compensate for that with, yeah, just being really intelligent, race intelligence and sort of uh, using every little advantage I can in terms of like aerodynamics and yeah, making sure that I'm feeling really well all the time because my younger self, I think, ignored some of those things too. But uh, yeah, just trying to fill in all the gaps with, I guess, intelligence where I can
Mhm.
instead of brute strength.
Maybe you just answered this in the last 10, 20 seconds or so, but what does it mean to you to race intelligently? Like, what does that look like?
I mean, it's once again, I think the sort of textbook answer, and I do believe this, is racing to, be close to what you've trained at. I mean, I
Mhm.
always try to access a new level on race day because, of course, you're rested and you're ready to go. You're hungry. It's racing. You always try to get to a higher level. But I think, especially in Ironman, the old quote from Mark Allen was something like, "It's about who can whisper the loudest," and I still think that's true. And it doesn't mean that we're not going fast or going really hard, but I think it just means that you're kind of staying within yourself and you're sort of doing what you actually train to do. Because when you
Mhm.
get too external and you're chasing, somebody else's, you know, bike prowess or whatever it is, oftentimes you end up putting yourself in a position where you just weren't trained for that, and it's like, what do
Mhm.
you think is going to happen? You didn't you didn't prepare for this scenario. So yeah, to me that's kind of the first answer that comes to mind. But also sometimes being race intelligent is taking a chance and taking a risk because I've also surprised myself before and done things that I wouldn't necessarily believe were possible based on the training that I had done. So
Mhm.
and I wish I could tell you that it was because I was smart or something, but sometimes it's because you're lucky or, you guess, I guess, and sometimes you get it right and sometimes you don't. But that's also the allure and like what makes racing cool because it's not predetermined.
Yeah.
The fittest guy doesn't always win. The smartest guy doesn't always win. And yeah, I think it's just cool being in the moment, being so, yeah, connected to the moment and really just trying, your best to like live in that moment and make, the decision you think is right and then live with the consequence.
Are there any like are there any misconceptions that you have had in your career that then you have set aside at some point? You know, like a certain way of training or a certain way of thinking about training or racing that you came to realize wasn't serving you?
Yeah, I mean, mm, no, not actually. No, I would say no. I feel like I've usually had like a lot of confidence, or I feel like I've been sensitive to what I felt like I needed. I think the question more is like, did you did you not do something,
Hmm.
that maybe would have made you better? And I think that's the question that comes to mind more for me. And I think it's a pretty, and I think that's part of the hallmark of a good athlete is that they're very curious about what's out there, and they do experiment and play around, whether that's gear or nutrition or different training styles and methodologies. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's more. It's not that I felt like I was doing something that I needed to abandon, but more so just wondering like, should I have done more of this, or could I have been better if I would have done this? And that it's an impossible question to answer. You can go down that road. Eventually, you have to just do something and commit to it, I think. Um, but yeah, that's kind of the nature of all this too. Is you always wonder if you could have gone a little faster or been a little better, and that's part of the drug of like coming back to it too. Is,
Hmm.
is seeing if you can. But No, I can't think of a training, situation where I felt like I was really did mess up a disservice or really had to get away from something toxic or something. Yeah.
Nice. That's great. That must feel pretty good, though. That must feel like that does that make you feel that you generally were making solid decisions and kind of listening to what you needed?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've usually had that confidence. I don't know if it's something my parents taught me or what, but I think I've usually been able to listen to myself about what I think feels right and act on that. And it's what I also hope to give my children, to
Hmm.
instill that confidence in them to really listen to like what their gut is telling them. Because I think it's that, when you're living in alignment with that, then life just seems like it just feels better, I think. I
Hmm.
saw maybe you follow this guy, but Steve Magnus, I think is how you say his name.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
he's great.
he's really good, and I appreciate his content. And he was talking about how, and I don't even know his history. I should, but he was a whistleblower of some kind. I don't know if it
Yeah.
was in cycling or what.
It was the Oregon Project. It was in
Okay. Oh, for
Beaverton. It
running. Yeah.
was like,
Okay.
yeah,
That
it
makes
was
sense.
it was right at Nike. Yeah.
Yeah. So he kind of, blew the whistle on that whole thing a little bit, and he talked today or somewhat sometime I saw a post that he did about kind of living true to your values. And he's like, there's short-term pain sometimes, but the reward is that like, you can come out the other side feeling like you've lived your values. And
Hmm.
that's the one of the most important things I think is being true to yourself. So I feel like I've usually had that confidence. I mean, sometimes I look back and think that I've used my platform to express my opinions about certain things more and like made a difference in certain ways or something. But, you know, I also feel like that's a tricky one. And usually, especially online, it evolves into some sort of, battle with people
Hmm.
that's, keyboard warriors. So, um, yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've always been pretty good at, yeah, following my heart.
Nice. It triathlon is a funny sport in the fact that like the age groupers are so close to the pros. And like especially these days when there's some people going very, very fast at the age group level and like that line can blur sometimes. What do you see? Are there things that you see age groupers doing that you're like, oof, I don't know if that should be the focus, or I don't know if people are focusing in a positive direction at the particular moment in the sport? Like, do you have, I guess what I'm asking you is, do you have any sort of like, not pet peeves about the triathlon zeitgeist, but are there things that you see that you were like, ooh, I don't know if the energy of being focused in the right place?
I mean, I don't know if I'm close enough to it sometimes, as close as we are, like you said.
Hmm.
I feel like I'm pretty insulated in some ways in my world, mainly because I go and I train, and I'm usually in a high performance environment with other professional athletes. Like right now, my coach is in town. He's been here for a lot of the winter, and I'm training with other elites. And so, yes, there were a couple of age group triathletes that have cycled in and out of our group throughout this process, and I guess I could say a few things about what I saw there. But I don't know if I'm like qualified to speak on that exactly. And I'm not trying to be
Hmm.
diplomatic or something. I really just don't know. One thing I question sometimes just in general, because I recognize my own like the things that I don't like about it is how consuming it can be. And I think it's great. Exercise is amazing and competition's great and pursuing a goal is great. But sometimes, Ironman I think is destructive too. I mean, if
Hmm.
you're a family person with kids and a job and whatever else you have going on, I question whether the commitment is healthy. And,
Hmm.
something has to give at some point. We only have so much bandwidth and energy each day. And so I think about the stress it puts on people's relationships with their significant others, because I see that for myself.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I would say that's probably the main thing. It's kind of generically saying that I just wonder if doing the sport, at least the long distance stuff, is even, a good idea, period, for age groupers sometimes. But um, yeah, I guess they would probably come back and tell me that it adds positive structure to their life and, whatever maybe energizes them even or whatever. And it's a healthy thing overall. It probably is. But yeah, for sure, racing and training, though, I do see that a lot. Like, people pushing way too hard.
Hmm.
Um, above prescribed paces and powers and things like that. I don't know what it is, but yeah, it's like maybe I just need to like posture improve or something like that. And I'm certainly better at that myself. Occasionally, whatever, you can sense yourself like getting into a little swim battle with somebody. Um, but overall, I'm just kind of like, this is how I feel today. I'm trying to do what was prescribed to the best of my ability, and I might get it and I might not, but I'm going to
Mhm.
try to be pretty close to that and not go way above it, or hopefully not, flail way below it. But if I do flail way below it, I'm not going to like carry that around all day. I'm just going to come back tomorrow and try again. So um, that's all I've got really on that. I mean, you're
Nice.
probably closer to it. I'm sure you have something that you see.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of what you just talked about. Like the thing that worries me so much when I work with age groupers is they hold it so tightly. They hold it so tightly that I think that they kill it a lot of the time, where they get so um obsession is not the right word, but they get so focused or fixated on a particular outcome.
Invested, yeah.
Yeah, invested is great, and sometimes they get over leveraged if we're going to continue with the financial kind of metaphor, and they lose sight of the fun, and that definitely happened to me, and like I was a scrappier athlete than you in terms of results and ability. Um, but I think that if I had not held onto things as tightly sometimes, about, who I was as a cyclist or, anything like that, I think I would have had much better results because the two results where I was like, no, those were really good days were the days where I was just like, just going to do it. I'm just going to like let it come and not worry about the number that I see on my power meter and just kind of let it do what it's going to do. And those were the two best results of my career. And because of those experiences, I think I'm a little bit more like I might project that onto some of the age groupers that I work with. But I do really see lots of age groupers just getting so overly fixated on like, this workout has to go perfectly. It has to go this way. It's got to be these power numbers. And what you said earlier about like triathlon is essentially an act of faith. I'm sort of like, you just got to tape over the power meter, please. Like tape it over, go out, listen to your body. We're going to record the data, but don't get so overly focused on the numbers or the outcome. And that's something that I worry about because like you said, it takes up a ton of time. And if you're both taking up a ton of time and driving yourself crazy by like having to hit these numbers, then yeah, like that's where you end up, getting divorced or like not paying enough attention to your kids or losing your job and stuff like that. And that worries me. That is the thing that I find myself really being worried about with age group triathlon.
No, that's really good. And I think, yeah, it's an interesting thing, right? Because the reason, well, people sign up for and commit to training, they sign up for races and commit to training for a variety of reasons. But I think for a lot of people, they're curious about the challenge and like they're embracing it as a sort of positive thing. And like it is weird when, yeah, the thing that you're supposed to be doing for like fun or some kind of enjoyment or, yeah, whatever positivity, whatever you label you want to use, ends up being more of a negative, but yet,
Mhm.
yeah, they continue to do it. And that's, only each person, I guess, can kind of determine what that is for them. Um, but yeah, I also think I've evolved to becoming much less focused on outcome and more on process. And that's, maybe easy to say. I'm still super competitive. I will care, about how I perform as a result, when I race. But again, I mean, 99% of what we're doing is the training leading into it. And if you're not finding joy in that process, then it's okay. Do something
Mhm.
else. Um, there's a lot of things you can do in life.
Yeah. How did you kind of assemble your, this is a very big question, but it kind of goes off of what you just talked about learning to focus more on process. And a lot of the things you've talked about today about staying in the moment's all that you have. What sources have you kind of assembled your worldview from?
I mean, I definitely think, um, yeah, I feel like I remember being, in high school and even into college, like definitely reading up on Buddhism a bit, which I think, that certainly rings through and what and the things that you just highlighted. And then lately also Stoicism, um I feel like that also that kind of philosophy or that line of thought really resonates with me. And um yeah, I think just personal experience too built up over time where again, I think humans have this desire, and triathlon's a great example of believing that we can control, more than we can. We have this desire to feel a sense of control because it is kind of crazy, man. I mean, having a human incarnation and floating in space. And I know everyone has a different opinion on all of that about where we came from and where we're going. And yeah, I guess to me, though, like using my own experience, which is what I've always tried to do, it's a bit overwhelming and like it doesn't always make sense, and I think we try to make sense of things. And yeah, and that constant need for a sense of control or orienting yourself in sort of an uncertain world instead of embracing the uncertainty is ultimately kind of, leads to negative outcomes. So I'm more leaning into, yeah, the uncertainty side of things, being vulnerable, being okay with change and, a lack of control. Because it doesn't, trying to control things more doesn't lead to more control, or like I said, better outcomes necessarily in my experience. So, uh, yeah, I think that's just kind of where all of that's come from for me is, yeah, maybe some small studies in the past, but mostly just building life experience, being observant
Mhm.
and seeing sort of the outcomes that I have in my own experiences.
Nice. All right, last question. If you had not spent the last 20 years doing this, what do you think you would have been doing?
Oh, I really, my eye is attracted to design and I always enjoy looking at different artworks or just seeing like things in nature that sort of strike me as beautiful. And, even if they're sort of accidental or not even necessarily art, as you would call it in quotes. So I think if I would have had, if I had the courage, which I do think I took a lot of courage to pursue this career because it is certainly non-traditional and low percentage in terms of actually making a living at it.
Mhm.
I would like to say that I would have been an artist of some kind. Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. There's still time to do that. You have a
Yeah.
whole second
Yeah.
act.
It's on my radar for sure. I've got a pile of metal in the back and I like to play around with a welder. And my dad's a, retired building contractor and I grew up around woodworking and, that's an interest that I would like to pursue. I did a long period of in high school into college of pottery, throwing pots, building things in clay. So yeah, different mediums. I did some photography as well. I mean, yeah, I've always been kind of interested in that, like building tangible things with my hands, with different materials and things that are pleasing to my eye and hopefully to others as well. So we'll see. Maybe I'll turn into some kind of fabricator and, I'll be building chandeliers or something.
That would be awesome. I want a Hoffman chandelier.
All right. Well, you can get on the list, man.
Sweet. Yeah, we'll start the
It's
wait
a,
list.
it's a long line. There's
I bet.
a lot of demand,
It's
but
it's like everybody you've been on a bike ride with in the last 3 years. You're like, I'm gonna make chandeliers, and everyone's like, I want one of your
a
chandeliers.
chandelier, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think I might have been the first time that I've said that. So you're front of the line, front of the line
Sweet.
on
Oh my
chandelier.
God. I love it. I get Hoff's first chandelier. That's going to be amazing.
Awesome.
Well, where can people, most people who are watching this already know where to find you, but where can people find you and how can they watch you at Lanzarote?
Well, it's not a like Ironman series race, so I don't think there's any like video coverage, but I'm sure there's a tracker like always. And Kelsey might throw some stuff up on our Instagram. I'm not super active on there anymore. I do some stories here and there, and I anticipate that I'll do some more posting and stuff as I get close to the race potentially. But yeah, their Instagram probably Ironman tracker, and then yeah, that's probably actually about it. Yeah, I feel like maybe there'll be some kind of articles or things that come out of it. Maybe I'll even take the time to compose some of my thoughts about what this year has been, and what that experience was once it's over, and try to share that with everybody. But don't hold me to that because we're going on vacation straight after, and I'm probably going to get pretty wrapped up and just going full recovery dad mode. So
That's awesome. Where are you guys going on vacation?
we are going to Morocco, which I'm quite excited about. It's very close to the Canary Islands, as you can imagine. It's right off the
Mhm.
coast of Morocco, actually. So we're going to go there for about a week, I think, and then we have an invite from some friends of ours that we met at the Island House Triathlon years ago that live on the Isle of Man, and they invited us to come watch the Isle of Man TT, the motorcycle race.
No way.
I've
Oh my
always wanted,
gosh.
I mean, I've seen videos and I'm always like, this is one of the craziest things that ever happens on planet Earth. So I'm like, I got to go see that. And we're going to. And then shortly after that, we are going to see Jesse and Amy in Switzerland. It's a friend of mine, another triathlon professional
Mhm.
and a coach that he and his wife, for those who don't know, Jesse Vondercheck moved to Switzerland. His wife teaches at international school in Basel, and so we're going to visit them there and then spend another few days on like the France Switzerland border, doing some hiking and bike riding, hopefully, and then come home in the middle of June, I think. So
That sounds like an awesome vacation.
yeah, it'll be really fun, man. And the whole thing, the kiddos are coming.
Mhm.
My parents and Kelsey's parents are both coming to the race, and to Morocco, so that'll be fun to include them in that too. Um, yeah, it's going to be quite the trip, I think. So hopefully I can, if this is the last one, it should be a good send off.
Nice. Well, I wish you good fortune in making that decision. It's obviously a big one and it's different for everybody. But this was really awesome. Thank you so much for taking an hour out of your time to hang out and chat. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I always enjoy chatting with you, and yeah, I feel like you do a great job, interviewing and
Ben, thank you so much, everybody. Ben Hoffman. And yeah, we'll see you all next time. I hope this was a productive visit to the infirmary.